Terry sighed, looking around, devastated. Did, the meadows covered in rocks and dust, then glanced up at the side of the mountain that had been torn away from the mountain. Lord Terry, one of the Njars said, running towards him. What is it? Did you find anything? The war god asked, his own brown hair ruffled by the fresh breeze. Black marks which probably belong to a dragon, my lord, he answered. His gray eyes whitened slightly before the look of sight panic flashed on his face. No body, nothing else, he asked. No, my lord. If a dragon attacked the prince, he wouldn't have been able to defend himself on his own, one of the Njars said. Terry then turned his head back to them, thinking deeply. The golden armored soldiers glanced at each other, uneasy at the idea that they had to bring the news of their prince's death to the royal family in Asgard. The brown-haired god glanced at the pile of bodies of Hennijar, and the spies that have been found on the way to the place. Each and every one have died mysterious reasons. Only Uri and her healers would be able to determine the cause of death. He grumbled, tightening up his lips in annoyance. Something's wrong, he murmured, unable to understand the situation. The prince was gone from Hemmedamel's view as the Henjar sent the guards from him a distance that had been assassinated, and a dragon had attacked the prince, but no sign of him or his death. A dragon would swallow him quickly, but something was definitely wrong. Lord Terry, another of the Henjar said, waving wildly to gain his attention. Leaving some of his men where they already were, with several others, he ran up alongside the river until they reached a path that had been followed by the prince from the mountain that had been attacked. Lord Terry, the Anajar started, looking slightly panicked. We found something. The war guard followed him as he indicated with his finger, something kept under the rock but still easy to find. Terry knelt down, not far from the edge of the river, and took out the bandage covered in blood, but not enough to worry him about the prince's well-being. He smirked, chuckling lightly before standing, glancing around, but seeing nothing of importance. That clever boy, he murmured. He took a deep breath, then turned around to give his orders. Prince Loki is still alive and well, he exclaimed before turning towards Volbound. Take 6 men and follow the path he should have taken, and as secretly as possible. He is an entire day ahead of you, but be careful to whatever thing might have caused the others' deaths. We'll use falcons to send messages. Yes, sir, Dan Harry exclaimed, giving a nod and then turning towards the 6 men. We'll be talking. As for the others, we're returning to Asgard, Terry exclaimed, climbing on his horse, and after a moment, the Henjar were able to return the following behind him on their horses. He kept frowning the whole way back to the spot where Hendemel would bring them back and look at the Bifrost. If the Queen's maids were traitors and someone managed to attack the princes without being noticed, then it's possible the latter had followed Loki all the way here, killing the Henjar and spies that were on his trail. He gritted his teeth, slamming the horse's bridle to go faster. Whoever the enemy was, they were dangerous. If you don't eat it, you'll drop dead, and I won't drag you all the way up to Utgard, Loki said, taking another mouthful of bread. Isa glanced up at him for the untouched part of the meal. She hesitated for a long moment, and the man still eating stared at her intensely before she finally sighed and spoke up. Can't we take another path up to get up to Utgard? She asked with a little voice. The jaws slowed down before ceasing to chew. Loki swallowed, frowning. The look, slight and amusement was gone, replaced with high annoyance. Why? He asked suspiciously. He bit her lower lip, glancing around before leaning forward. I think it would be safer to go a different way, she murmured. The path we are taking is the fastest to reach Utgard. I am already delayed by that stupid dragon. I can't lose any more time to be safe, he said sharply, his tone leaving no room for argument. But Isa wasn't the kind to back down and continued, and should I remind you that I'm still your prince and leader of this mission, and thus make the decisions? He cut before he He continued his chewing. She sighed before frowning and grimacing. Who made you the leader anyway? Are you really going to discuss that? He asked, raising eyebrows in amazement at the nerve of that girl. He shrugged before answering. I will if you don't let me talk, she replied calmly. Loki almost choked down from bravery, or complete stupidity. She had to speak to him this way. I did let you talk. You've spoken nonsense, he stated sharply, becoming more and more irritated by this girl. Would you listen to what I have to say? I am not proposing another path just to take sake of the annoying hell out of you, for no matter how tempting it is, she exclaimed, glaring at him. He stared at her, electricity sparking between them, but none looking away. Loki kept his watery green eyes on the intense dark ones when he opened his lips. Then for what reason would you want to change our path? He questioned with a cold tone. She sighed once again before glancing around, suddenly looking uncomfortable, which raised the god's curiosity. I think we're being followed by someone or something, she murmured, fidgeting with her hands on her laps worriedly. He frowned, his body immediately freezing in alert. Why? He asked quickly, yet quietly. When you threw me away the second time, I was on my way back to Bifrost's state, she said, ignoring his surprised expression that she did listen to him, at least a little. But then there was a body, she breathed, staring at him, fear dancing in her eyes. His eyes whitened slightly, but he didn't have to ask before she answered his silent question. It was an Harry, dead. I don't know what could have killed him, considering I didn't walk by anyone or anything, but it wasn't a natural death, she said, looking serious and frightened. He took a deep breath to calm his beating heart. He knew that his father had sent some Henjar and spies to follow him from a distance, in case if something were to go wrong. He had been surprised that none had come to his rescue when the dragon had attacked, but he had been too occupied with the battle to think about it now. If no one came to his help, and something or someone did follow him, as Isa says, did that thing kill all the Henjari following him? And then what about the head-mouth doll? He did know anything. Couldn't he have seen those Asgardians getting killed off one by one? He gritted his teeth and clenched his fist. Something was off at the beginning of the story. It wouldn't surprise him that the assassin that got injured so badly would follow him, and the attacker was using Cedar, which means he could hide wherever he wants, away from Headmel's view, which also meant Loki was all alone. His eyes turned towards Isa, who kept glancing around nervously. Well, he wasn't completely alone. He didn't want this thought to be warming his heart, but he couldn't stop a slight beat of relief from shooting through his body anyway. He didn't trust this girl, but what she said was too much of a possibility to be ignored. He would gladly set up a trap to catch whoever was following him, who was most probably his enemy as well. It would take too much time to make it and wait. He quickly fought through as fast as possible paths to reach Utgard, then got up swiftly, shrinking back a few items that he had gotten out of his pockets. Get up, we're leaving, he ordered. She blinked at him in surprise before quickly following him. His long legs had already brought him ahead of her. His stare remained right in front of him, and she struggled to keep up with him, his strides much longer than hers. Do we still go to Asgard following the original path? I mean, I just said we could be followed. It isn't dangerous to keep going towards the obvious way. After all, this person, whatever that could be, because we are taking another path, he said, cutting her nervous rambling off. Really? Which way? How long will it take us to reach Asgard? She asked. We'll avoid the most obvious pathways and send illusions to the same path we've been following until now, she said, frowning at her from the amount of questions. As for the time it'll take, probably about 2 or 3 days, if everything goes well. He threw her a glare, then pouted. I do hope you're not wrong, otherwise I'll choose the considerable time going along this way. But I don't have a choice, he mumbled, calculating how long he would have to gather information with this detour. I didn't finish my bread, she said, glancing down at the piece of food in her hands. Then eat, he exclaimed, rolling his eyes angrily. Not while walking. Do you know what it does to the stomach? You end up swallowing air and then you feel bad and then... Oh, for Valhalla's sake, shut up, he said, sighing and tightening his lips. She snorted and glared at him. Silence fell on them for a moment before she smirked. But you're not the leader, she murmured to herself in a childish, sulking way. He froze and glared at her. She smirked at him and then walked back ahead, laughing at his expression. He stayed still while her laugh resonated in the mountains. He observed her for a moment before sighing and putting a hand through his black hair, hoping that nothing else would delay him any longer. After hours of silent walking, the girl began to feel bored and lonely, thus deciding to break the silence. Are you not going to tell me where we're going? Isa asked. Loki threw her a quick glance before looking back at the path they were following, much more complicated and dangerous than the first one. I told you we're taking another way. Now save your breath. You'll need it. Do you even have a map on you? She continued in disbelief. He grinned and tapped his temple. Don't need to. Map's all up here. She then slowly moved down a little before slowly smiling, accelerating to keep up with his path. After another moment of silence, he spoke up again. So why are you here? She asked, after pulling a flower and rolling it between her fingers. He frowned slightly and looked over at the shoulder at the auburn-haired girl. She had a silly smile on her face as she observed the little pitiful flower that had been plucked. Why would you wish to know? He asked, trying to keep up with his voice from turning sharp suspicion. She glanced at him and then shrugged, to keep the conversation going. You don't need to know anything about me, he said, turning back towards the road. Then I'll talk about me, she offered. He was about to refuse, but when she ran up to beat at his level and started talking before he could tell her to keep her mouth shut. I grew up in Asgard with my parents and my older sister. My mother is an Asgardian and my father is a Vanar, and he died of one of those battles involving the mountain god giants. She frowned, and her expression forlorn and dark. Sounds like those giants have a gift of taking away what's precious from me, she murmured. Loki glanced at her but didn't say anything. She took a deep breath and continued. My mother started working for Queen Frigga when I was very young, and my sister was also the maids of the palace. But not you? He inquired, raising an eyebrow. No, I've always admired Lady Sif for working so hard and becoming a warrior without joining the Valkyrie. I wanted to become like her, she exclaimed, her eyes gleaming happily at the young prince. Couldn't help but chuckle at her excited expression. If you were joining the Valkyrie, you would be a warrior much faster than you if you have to convince the 9 words that you're worthy of your sword, he commented. She turned towards him, looking suddenly serious. But I don't see why I should have to convince someone as long as I fight for Asgard, woman or not. Plus, I enjoy the company of men, and I don't want to give up on that, she added with a wink. Loki froze in his steps, warmth bubbling up inside him before he frowned and growled, keeping his pace while he ignored his troubled expression. I'm a very patient woman. It'll take the time it needs, but my dreams will come true, she added with a sweet smile. He snorted then shrugged. You have some confidence in your capacities, I'll admit it, he said, glancing around to make sure there wasn't anyone or anything following them. What about you? What do you want to become? She asked, sounding genuinely curious. He froze and threw a hard look at her. She froze as well and paled, swallowing when she realized how stupid of a question it was. Sorry, I guess you don't have much of a choice. After a tense moment of silence, which they started walking once again, she spoke up again. If you could do anything at all, if you had the choice, what would it be? She asked. He forced himself not to look at the girl, focusing on his steps. It doesn't matter. I'm a prince of Asgard, and dreaming about meaningless possibilities that will never happen isn't worth my time, he answered sharply. She observed him in silence, but when he started to think she had dropped the conversation, she spoke up again. If you could choose any path in your life, if you weren't a prince, do you think it would be good for an Asgard's sake? Would you rather save it or destroy it? He turned around to suddenly she bumped into him and remained only a few inches from him. His lips were hanging open in shock and he was frowning, looking completely astonished. How could he even ask such thing? I've always saved Asgard, prince or not, he exclaimed. She didn't glance away, her intense gaze fighting this. Electricity rose between the two of them, willing to give up the staring contest. Now I have to ask you, if you would rather work for Asgard's safety or its destruction, he asked in a low, dark tone. She continued staring at him, her gaze unflinching until she smiled sadly, a sudden scared light flicking in her bright green eyes. I don't know, she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. A few days ago I would have fought for my life for Asgard, but his eyes hardened, and she finally lowered her gaze, staring in emptiness. But after what happened to my mother and what Odin did to my sister, she murmured. Loki blinked and felt suddenly uncomfortable and turned that was taking the conversation. Your sister? What happened to her? He asked. She looked at him, frowning slightly, not understanding. What happened? He asked more urgently. She didn't answer for a long moment, staring at him hesitantly, but finally her trembling lips opened. After the attack against Queen, Odin ordered Henjar to arrest the families of all the spies. Loki's face remained expressionless, but his eyes flickered, suddenly understanding why she was so determined to go away to Asgard to find out the truth. If she was right, her mother would have been used like any tool, then her sister, and all the other people rested will be declared innocent and freed. She was not only trying to redeem her mother, but also tried to save her sister as well, just like Loki was trying to protect and save his family. That's why, she started. Not another word, he cut sharply. She stared at him with an astonishment in a sudden tone, feeling more shaken than she would have. He then turned his back to her, barely keeping his sight, and escaping from his speaking up once again. I'll make sure you make it back to Asgard, and what if you were saying is true and your mother is just a victim? I'll personally free your sister from her cell, he said before starting to walk again. She stared at him, completely frozen and mouth wide, before grinning and running after him. Thank you, she exclaimed brightly. He glanced at her, not just long enough to see how bright she looked before looking away. His only answer was disdainful snort, but even to him, it didn't sound convincing.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.